The iron market of Valdris reeked of despair and copper coins. Serafina pulled her 5-year-old daughter Lyrelai closer as they navigated through the pressing crowd, avoiding the mud that had turned the square into a swamp after last night's storm. "Why are there so many people, Mama?" Lyrelai whispered, her small fingers tightening around Serafina's worn cloak. "Market day," Serafina murmured, though the usual merchant stall stood empty. Instead, the crowd gathered around the central platform, a raised stone circle stained dark with old blood. Overseer Grimwald stood beside the platform, his gold-threaded robes pristine despite the surrounding filth. Today, the platform held 3 figures in chains, but only one drew every eye. He knelt in the center, and even from 30 feet away, Serafina could see he was unlike any man she'd encountered. Massive iron shackles bound his wrists and ankles, the metal having carved deep grooves into his skin. Yet he knelt with a straight spine, head raised despite the heavy collar around his throat. His skin bore strange markings, intricate black tattoos that seemed to shift and move in the morning light, covering his arms and disappearing beneath his torn shirt. His hair, white as fresh snow despite his youth, had been roughly shorn on one side, a deliberate humiliation that somehow only emphasized the sharp angles of his face. "Behold!" Grimwald's voice carried across the square. "A shadowborn warrior, captured from the Darklands beyond our borders. His kind refused to pay tribute to our empire, so he becomes property instead." A ripple of excitement mixed with fear ran through the crowd. Shadowborn, the very name was legend. Warriors who could supposedly command darkness itself, who lived in the cursed lands where the sun never fully rose. "The bidding starts at 50 silver marks," Grimwald announced. "Think of the strength in those arms." No one moved. Despite Grimwald's encouragement, fear kept their purses closed. Serafina found herself pushing forward, drawn by something she couldn't name. As she drew closer, she could see more clearly. Beneath the dirt and blood, his features were striking. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes of pale winter silver that scanned the crowd with cold calculation. Not defeated, not broken, waiting. 40 silver marks, Grimwald said, irritation creeping into his voice. "He'll kill whoever buys him," someone called out. "Shadowborn don't submit." "He's bound with blessed iron," Grimwald countered. "He cannot access his demon powers." 30 silver marks, Grimwald pressed on, his voice growing strained. The warrior's gaze suddenly locked onto hers. Serafina felt the impact like a physical blow. In those storm-colored depths, she saw intelligence, pride, and something else. Recognition that made no sense. They'd never met. But her hand moved instinctively to the necklace hidden beneath her cloak, her mother's dying gift. A simple silver chain with a peculiar black stone that seemed to hold stars within its depths. She'd worn it every day for 15 years, never removing it, her last connection to family. 20 silver marks, Grimwald announced, growing angry now. A young man picked up mud and hurled it at the platform. It struck the warrior's chest, spreading filth across his skin. The crowd laughed, emboldened. More projectiles followed. Rotted vegetables, stones. The Shadowborn didn't flinch, didn't lower his gaze, but Serafina saw his jaw tighten as he maintained his dignity. 15 silver marks, Grimwald said desperately. Or he goes to the labor camps. The labor camps meant death within weeks. 10 silver marks, final offer before... Stop. The word left Serafina's mouth before she could think. The crowd turned to stare, a nobody seamstress daring to speak at the iron market. Her hand was already pulling the chain over her head, the black stone catching the light as it emerged. "I offer this," Grimwald's eyes widened greedily. Where did you get that? It was my mother's. This is worth more than 10 silver, Grimwald said slowly, reaching for the necklace with eager fingers. Much more. Do you know what this stone is? I know it's all I have. The moment Grimwald's fingers touched the chain, the warrior moved. Despite the massive shackles, he lunged forward with inhuman speed. Kritara nex morthana, shavel nari tethra. The foreign words slammed into Seraphina's mind with their meaning as clear as if spoken in her own tongue. Mine. She is mine. I claim her before all. Grimwald jerked back, nearly dropping the necklace. What did you— The warrior's eyes blazed brighter. He spoke again, this time in accented but clear common tongue. You wear the Star of Shadows. For 15 years it has been preparing your soul, marking you deeper with each touch. By offering it for my freedom, you invoke the mate bond law of my people. The crowd erupted in chaos. People stumbled backward, some making warding signs. But Seraphina couldn't move, caught in that winter storm gaze. That's impossible, she whispered. The stone called to me across realms. I am Calyx Night Whisper, War Prince of the Shadow Court, and you are my destined mate. Mama! Lyralay's frightened voice broke through Seraphina's shock. Silence! Grimwald roared. Take your payment and your slave, woman. Get him out of my market. Calyx laughed, a dark, rich sound that shouldn't have been possible from someone so beaten. I am no slave. She has invoked the oldest law. Where she goes, I follow. Where I go, she is bound to follow. We are linked now. Grimwald cursed viciously but had no choice. The transaction was complete, witnessed by hundreds. He threw the keys at Seraphina's feet with disgust. As she unlocked Calyx's shackles with trembling hands, she felt something shift inside her. A warmth that wasn't her own. A presence brushing against the edges of her consciousness like silk against skin. What have you done to me? She asked. Nothing that wasn't already destined. The star chose you as worthy. Your act of compassion proved it correct. The bond will grow stronger with proximity and time. I don't understand any of this. He stood to his full height, towering over her. You will. But first, we must leave this place. Your overseer plans to send soldiers within the hour. How could you possibly know that? I can sense hostile intentions now that the blessed iron is weakening. My twin sister Nyxara leads our forces nearby. I allowed myself to be captured deliberately to find the Starbearer, to find you. Your sister? You have a twin? She commands our armies. She'll explain everything when we reach safety. He offered his hand, palm up in a gesture of trust. Please, time grows short. Against all logic, looking into those storm-silver eyes, Seraphina found herself believing him. She took his hand, and the moment their skin touched, warmth flooded through her. Not unpleasant, but foreign and powerful. Come, little one, Calyx said gently to Lyrelai. I will not harm you or your mother. This I swear on my shadow. Seraphina led Calyx through the narrow, twisting alleys of Valdris toward her cottage at the settlement's edge, where cobblestones gave way to wild grass. Lyrelai clung to her skirts, stealing curious glances at the imposing warrior who followed them like a protective shadow. Once inside their modest two-room home, Seraphina sent Lyrelai to her room despite the child's protests, then faced Calyx. Even hunched slightly beneath the low ceiling, he dominated the small space. The blessed iron is brittle against plain steel, she said, retrieving her sharp sewing shears. Hold still. She needed a stool to reach the collar at his throat. This close, his wild scent was overwhelming. Pine forests, winter storms, and something anciently magical. Her fingers brushed his skin as she worked, and each touch sent unexpected sparks racing through her entire body. The collar cracked and fell away. Calyx drew in a deep breath, and the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Shadows in the corners seemed to deepen and move, reaching toward him like old friends greeting their master. "Careful," she warned, working on his wrist shackles. "I would never harm my mate. I'm not your—" "The star has been preparing you," he interrupted gently. "Each time you touched it over 15 years, it marked your soul deeper, awakening what lay dormant. Your mother knew this would happen." "My mother was a simple seamstress." "Your mother was Princess Morwen's younger sister, fled to the human realm for love." The last shackle fell, and shadows immediately wrapped around him, healing his wounds with visible speed. "You're half Shadowborn royalty." "That's impossible. I've lived in sunlight my whole life." "Half-bloods can tolerate sunlight. The star awakens dormant blood when destiny calls." He stepped closer, and she had nowhere to retreat. "When you offered it for my freedom, what did you feel?" Heat. Power. Recognition deep in her bones. But she wouldn't admit it. "Nothing," she lied. His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away, then touched her cheek. The moment skin met skin, the world exploded. Power raced through her veins, not foreign but familiar, like something long sleeping finally stirring to life. For a heartbeat she saw through his eyes, herself glowing with silver light, shadow marks beginning to appear beneath her skin like hidden tattoos rising to the surface. She gasped and jerked away. "What did you do?" "Showed you the truth. Fighting the bond will only cause pain for us both." Sudden footsteps approached outside, many of them. Through the window, torches appeared, dozens of flames cutting through the evening gloom. "Grimwald sent guards," Seraphina breathed, her heart racing. "And, oh gods, Lord Commander Theron leads them." Theron, the Emperor's personal enforcer who collected magical beings for his experiments, who was rumored to dissect them while still living to understand their power. "Take your daughter and run," Calyx commanded, shadows already coiling around him like living armor. "I'll hold them." "I can't leave you." The words came unbidden, shocking her with their vehemence. She realized with growing alarm that it was physically true. Something pulled painfully at her chest at the mere thought of distance between them. "The bond manifests quickly for royal blood," he muttered, seeming unsurprised. "We're already connected." The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. Guards poured through with blessed iron chains. Calyx moved like liquid darkness, striking down 3 before they could react. But there were too many, and the blessed iron weakened him. "No!" Seraphina screamed, and something deep inside her snapped like a dam breaking. Shadow erupted from her skin, not controlled, but wild, violent, desperate. It slammed into the guards like a physical force, sending them flying through walls. When it faded, she collapsed to her knees, drained. Lord Commander Theron stood in her ruined doorway, smiling with scientific interest. 2 Shadowborn for the price of 1. How delightful. Darkness claimed her as Calyx roared her name in the old tongue, a sound of pure anguish. Consciousness returned with the taste of copper and ash. Seraphina's eyes opened to find herself in an obsidian cell, its walls veined with blessed silver that made her newly awakened powers recoil. Lirali huddled in the corner, unharmed but terrified. "Mama, your arms." Black tattoos now covered Seraphina's skin, intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with each heartbeat, silver light moving beneath like captured lightning. "Fascinating. Lord Commander Theron appeared beyond the bars, his scarred face eager. A dormant Shadowborn awakening. I've theorized about this phenomenon. Where is he? Seraphina demanded, struggling to stand. Without waiting for an answer, Theron touched something on the wall. The obsidian beside their cell became transparent like glass. Calyx hung suspended in the next chamber, wrapped in blessed iron chains that cut into his flesh. Dark blood dripped steadily to the floor. Glass tubes connected to his arms, slowly draining liquid shadow into waiting containers. Shadowborn essence, Theron said conversationally, worth fortunes to the right buyers. And War Prince blood? Priceless beyond measure. Rage flooded through Seraphina, primal and overwhelming. Her new marks blazed silver-white, and the blessed silver in the walls began to sing, a high, painful note. Interesting. You're affecting blessed metal. That should be impossible for a half-blood. Let him go. Submit to my experiments willingly, and I'll stop draining him. Fight me, and I'll take every drop of shadow he has. Through the transparent wall, Calyx's eyes opened, fixing on her. Despite everything, he mouthed a single word. No. I'll do it, she said, but release my daughter first. She's human, no use to you. Human? Theron laughed coldly. The traveling merchant with unusual gray eyes who fathered her? He was Shadowborn, a spy. You bore a quarter-blood child without knowing. The world tilted. Seraphina's knees went weak. Lyralay's father, the gentle man who'd made her laugh, who'd promised to return, who'd left her with child and vanished, had been one of them. The betrayal cut deep, mixing with a strange sense of destiny. We caught him 5 years ago. He's dead now. Before Seraphina could process this devastating revelation, alarms began shrieking through the facility. Commander! The Darklands army, thousands of them. The guard's report ended in a wet gurgle as shadows formed into spears through his chest. A woman strode through the doorway, tall, devastating, white-haired with marks covering every visible inch of skin. Her eyes were pure molten silver, and power radiated from her in visible waves. Sister, she said to Seraphina, I've come for you. I don't have a sister. Sister by bond. I'm Nyxara, Calyx's twin. The Shadow Court sent 3,000 warriors for its lost royalty. She turned those terrible eyes on Theron. Did you think we wouldn't respond? Theron backed against the wall, hand going to his sword. The wards. Hold 3 Shadowborn, not 3,000. She gestured, and the cell bars dissolved into smoke. Come. This place burns with shadow fire soon. Calyx. Already freed. My brother is many things, but weak isn't one. An explosion rocked the facility, proving her point. Nyxara knelt before Lyralai, touching the child's forehead with unexpected gentleness. Faint silver marks flared to life on the girl's skin. Quarter blood, but royal blood nonetheless. They fled through the burning ruins. Outside, Valdris itself burned with black flames that consumed without smoke. Ahead lay the Darklands border, and answers about everything. 3 nights of hard travel through hostile territory brought them to the Darklands border. They moved only in darkness when Calyx could wrap them in concealing shadows. During the day's rest, Seraphina learned the truth of her heritage. Your mother was Queen Morwen's younger sister, Nyxara explained, drawing bloodline symbols in the dirt. She fled for love with a human diplomat, taking the Star of Shadows as protection. It would only respond to one worthy of continuing the royal line. The star chose him for me? The star revealed what was already destined. Calyx spent 50 years searching for rumors of a woman with a stone that held starlight. For 4 centuries before that, he felt nothing but battle rage, our perfect weapon. Then he sensed the star's awakening and knew its bearer was his. Getting captured in Valdris was deliberate. Serafina watched Calyx teaching Lyrelay to shape shadows into small butterflies, infinitely patient with each failure. The bond hummed between them, growing stronger but increasingly painful when they were apart even briefly. That night, as they camped near the border, Calyx approached her alone. The threshold ahead is more than a border. It's a living magical barrier. Only those with Shadowborn blood can pass safely, or those claimed by a Shadowborn. We have the blood. Yours is still awakening, unstable, and quarter-bloods like Lyrali sometimes can't cross at all. The barrier might trap her between realms, neither here nor there, slowly fading to nothing. Her heart clenched painfully. There must be another way. There is. Complete the mate bond fully. Then you'd both pass under my protection, recognized as mine by the old magic. Complete how? His hand cupped her cheek, thumb tracing her cheekbone with surprising tenderness. A blood exchange, a marking, a joining of souls through the shadow realm. It's intimate, irreversible, binding us forever. I barely know you. Your soul knows mine. Every dream you've had since touching the star. Every moment our shadows reach for each other. We're already connected. She couldn't deny it. The dreams had been vivid. His memories bleeding into hers. His childhood in the shadow court. The moment he'd sensed the star awakening. The certainty that its bearer was his destiny. If I refuse? Pain flickered across his features before he could hide it. Then we find another way, whatever the cost. Shouts erupted from where Nixara kept watch. Imperial soldiers had found them, dozens armed with blessed iron weapons. Go! Nixara shouted, shadows already rising around her. The threshold is just ahead. I'll hold them. Calyx grabbed Lyrelay, wrapping protective shadows around the child, and ran with Serafina through the dark forest. The threshold appeared suddenly, a wall of liquid darkness rising from earth to sky, rippling with primordial power. Serafina touched it, and agony lanced through every nerve. The barrier recognized her blood but found it wanting. Too diluted, too human still. She jerked back, crying out. More soldiers burst through the trees. Calyx set Lyrelay down gently and turned to face them, but there were too many. The bond, he said urgently. We must complete it now. An arrow struck his shoulder, blessed iron searing through shadow armor. He staggered but remained standing. Do it, Serafina said. Calyx pulled her against him, shadows wrapping around them in an impenetrable cocoon. His teeth found her throat, directly over the pulse. Pain and pleasure crashed through her as shadow poured from him into her, rewriting her very essence at the deepest level. Her weak human blood strengthened, transforming into something timeless. Now you, he gasped against her throat. Pure instinct guided her. Her teeth, now sharper, found his throat and bit deep. His blood tasted of starlight and storms, of eternity itself. The bond exploded into true completion. She saw his soul laid bare, his love that began the moment he'd sensed the star, his desperate hope during the auction, his agony when she was in danger, his wonder when she'd freed him. And he saw her loneliness, her strength, her fierce love for Lyrali, and her growing, undeniable love for him. They burst from their shadow cocoon to find soldiers surrounding them. Serafina raised her hand, and shadows responded like eager servants. A wave of pure darkness sent the soldiers flying. Lyrelay, hold tight to me. Together they approached the threshold. This time, the barrier parted like silk. The completed bond wrapped around all three, Calix's claim extending to the child Seraphina loved. They tumbled through into eternal twilight where shadows danced freely. Behind them, the threshold sealed completely. Nixara stumbled through moments later, wounded but grinning. "Welcome to the Darklands, cousin." The completed bond was overwhelming. Seraphina could feel everything Calix felt, every thought and emotion. And beneath it, the land itself seemed to recognize her, shadows gathering at her feet in supplication. "The Shadow Court recognizes its lost princess," Nixara said softly. "Welcome home." The Shadow Court defied every expectation. A city of black crystal and captive starlight where buildings seemed to grow from the earth itself and bridges were made of solid shadow. Eternal twilight bathed everything in silver and purple hues, and the air thrummed with primordial magic. But the beauty couldn't mask the tension. Shadowborns stopped to stare as they passed, whispers following in their wake. Lost princess, human raised, the war prince's chosen. The palace rose from the city's heart like a mountain of black glass, its spires disappearing into purple clouds. As they approached, Seraphina's marks began to burn with recognition. "Something's calling me," she whispered, pressing a hand to her chest. The throne room doors opened before they reached them, revealing the most beautiful and terrifying woman Seraphina had ever seen. Hair white as bone, eyes like dying stars, marks that seemed to move across her skin like living things. Queen Morwen, her aunt. "So," the queen said, her voice like distant thunder, "my sister's daughter finally returns." Seraphina felt Calix tense beside her. Through their bond, she caught his thought. The queen had opposed his search, believing human-raised royalty would weaken their bloodline irreparably. "Your Majesty," Seraphina said, but did not bow. Something deep in her royal blood refused to bend. "You have her pride, at least." The queen descended the obsidian steps. "But pride alone doesn't make you worthy of your heritage." "I don't want your crown." "No? The shadows sing your name, child. Every stone in this palace recognizes you. You're my sister's daughter, my only heir by blood." "Nixara is your daughter." "Nixara is a warrior, not a ruler." The queen's gaze shifted to Calix. "And you, nephew. You bound her before bringing her to me. Because I knew you would try to separate us." The queen laughed like breaking glass. "Separate you? I have no intention of breaking the bond. It's the only reason I'm considering accepting her at all. For 4.5 centuries, Calix was our greatest weapon, feeling nothing but battle fury. Then 50 years ago, he sensed the star awakening and became obsessed with finding its bearer. She did the impossible, gave the war prince a heart." She turned back to Seraphina. "You're weak, human-raised, ignorant of our ways, but you awakened what centuries couldn't touch. Prove you deserve your heritage. The Spring Moon Festival is in 3 days. Manifest the royal shadow, something only true heirs can summon, and I'll acknowledge you publicly. And if I can't, you remain merely Calix's mate. Your daughter becomes a servant, her blood too thin to matter." Rage flooded through Seraphina, and shadows exploded from her skin without conscious thought, clashing violently with the queen's own darkness. The queen smiled, the first genuine expression Seraphina had seen from her. "There's the fire my sister had beneath her gentle exterior. 3 days, child. Prove you're more than a pretty human who caught my nephew's eye." That night in their chambers, magnificent rooms of starlight and shadow, Seraphina paced while Calix watched from the doorway. "The royal shadow," she said. "Tell me everything." It's a manifestation of pure royal blood, taking the form of the family's guardian. The queen's is a dragon. Your mother's was a phoenix. Lady Velithara positions herself as heir, Nyxara said, entering without knocking. She's the queen's cousin, powerful and cruel. She'll challenge you at the festival. For 2 days, Seraphina trained relentlessly but couldn't manifest the royal shadow. Her normal shadows responded eagerly, but the royal shadow remained beyond reach. On the second night, exhausted and desperate, she collapsed in the palace gardens. An elderly woman approached from the shadows, hunched, marks faded with age. I served your mother. I was there when you were born, before the queen ordered you taken to the human realm. Why are you telling me this? Because you're trying to force the royal shadow to obey. That's not how it works. The royal shadow isn't about power but understanding who you truly are. Not human or shadowborn, not seamstress or princess. Who are you at your core? Seraphina spent that night not training but simply being. She sat with Lyrelai, telling stories. She lay in Calix's arms, feeling the bond pulse between them. She walked the palace, touching its stones, feeling its history. She was a mother, a mate, a bridge between two worlds that had been separated too long. At the festival, with hundreds of Shadowborn watching, Lady Velithara stepped forward as expected. I challenge the pretender. Velithara attacked immediately with shadow blades that could slice through stone. Seraphina defended but didn't attack, listening instead to what the shadows whispered about her opponent: fear of being replaced, centuries of ambition, desperate need for validation. When Velithara's massive shadow beast lunged for her throat, Seraphina didn't dodge. Instead, she thought of protecting everyone: Lirali, Calix, even the queen, of bridging two worlds, of being the shield between darkness and light. The royal shadow erupted without warning. It was massive, filling the entire throne room, not a dragon or phoenix, but something unique. A great wolf made of starlight and shadow, with wings of silver fire. It caught Velithara's beast in its jaws, crushing it to nothing, then stood over Seraphina protectively, howling with a sound that shook the palace foundations. Absolute silence fell. Even the queen stood from her throne, eyes wide with shock. Impossible, Velithara whispered, the royal shadow of unity. It hasn't been seen since the first Shadow King who united all the courts 1,000 years ago. The shadow wolf turned its great head to the queen and bowed once, then dissolved back into Seraphina, leaving her marks blazing with power. The shadows have chosen, the queen said slowly. Then, softer, with something like wonder, perhaps human-raised brings perspective we desperately need. You see both worlds without the prejudice centuries have built. That very night, Seraphina woke screaming from visions so vivid they felt like memories. Imperial armies marching on the Darklands with blessed iron weapons that could shatter the threshold permanently. At their head, Lord Commander Theron wielded something that made her soul recoil, a weapon forged from Calix's stolen essence. What did you see? Calix held her as she shook. Death. Theron escaped the facility before the shadow fire consumed it. He has a weapon made from your essence. It can destroy the threshold forever, and worse, it poisons shadows themselves. Any shadowborn it touches will wither and die. Within minutes, the War Council assembled. Seraphina described her prophetic vision, a gift that ran in the royal bloodline. How long do we have? The queen demanded. The blood moon, 3 nights from now, when our magic is weakest. We strike first, Nyxara said immediately. Half our forces are scattered across the realm, another commander protested. I need to go back, Serafina said quietly. The room erupted in protests. Absolutely not, Calix said, his voice like iron. The weapon is keyed to your essence and mine now through our bond. I'm the only one who can destroy it. It's obviously a trap, the Queen said. Theron knows about prophetic visions. I know, but if we don't stop him, every Shadowborn dies. The weapon doesn't just break the threshold, it's genocide. Mama, no! Lyra Lee had snuck into the chamber, tears streaming down her young face. Serafina knelt, pulling her daughter close. Little star, sometimes we have to do hard things to protect everyone we love. Then I'm coming with you, Calix said firmly. You can't. The weapon would kill you instantly. You need to protect Lyra Lie. She touched his face through their bond, sending all her love. Promise me. His anguish nearly shattered her resolve, but she held firm. There is the sundering ritual, the Queen said finally. Everyone gasped in horror. That's forbidden, Nyxara protested. It hasn't been done in 1,000 years. What's the sundering? A temporary severing of the mate bond. You'd become fully human again for one day. The weapon wouldn't recognize your shadow nature. No. Calix's voice was deadly. Sundering can become permanent if not restored within 24 hours. And if she dies while sundered, I die too. Better than watching our entire people die, Serafina said. Do it. The ritual was beyond agony. In the palace's deepest chamber, surrounded by runes older than memory, the Queen spoke words that predated the kingdom itself. Serafina felt the bond, that warm, constant presence, being torn from her soul strand by agonizing strand. Calix collapsed, blood running from his eyes as he fought not to scream. Serafina bit through her lip, tasting copper as her world went cold and empty. When it was done, she felt hollow. The shadows no longer answered her call. Her marks had faded to barely visible scars. 24 hours, the Queen warned. If the bond isn't restored by then, it's gone forever. Serafina left before dawn, unable to bear Calix's empty gaze or Lyrelai's desperate tears. The hard ride back took most of her precious time. She reached Theron's new laboratory as the blood moon began to rise, painting the world crimson. Guards looked for Shadowborn, not a simple human woman. She slipped past them using a seamstress's patience. The weapon sat exactly where her vision had shown, a crystallized mass of corrupted shadow essence, pulsing with sickly light. I knew you'd come. Theron emerged from the shadows, haggard and obsessed. You're human again. You actually severed the bond. How delightfully foolish. I came to make a deal. My humanity for my daughter's safety. Your blood, even human, carries traces of royal shadow. It will perfect my weapon. He grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the crystal. Your sacrifice heralds a new age, humanity's dominance over darkness. He pressed her hand to the crystal. Agony shot through her, but something else happened too. Deep inside, beneath the sundering, a spark remained. Not the mate bond, but something else. The star of shadows had marked her soul permanently during 15 years of wearing. That mark was hers alone. The spark recognized Calix's essence in the weapon and blazed with protective rage. Serafina began to glow, not with shadow, but with pure starlight. The human side of her heritage, enhanced by the star's prolonged touch. Light and shadow couldn't coexist in the corrupted weapon. Cracks spread like a spider's web. No! Theron tried pulling her away, but she held on with desperate strength. The explosion threw them both backward. The weapon was destroyed, reduced to harmless dust, but the effort had drained her life force almost completely. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. Despite the sundering, despite the distance, Calyx materialized from pure shadow. Not because he had his powers, but because the very act of sundering had created a shadow echo of their bond, and her light had called to it across the realms. Theron's sword descended toward Seraphina's heart, and struck Calyx instead as he threw himself between them. "Did you think?" Calyx gasped, blood running from his mouth as the blade pierced his chest. "That mere distance could stop me?" The sundering was already breaking. "Your light called to my shadow across worlds." He collapsed beside her. The bond slammed back into place with devastating force, bringing his pain and love in equal measure. They were both dying, their blood mixing on the cold stone. But that mixing blood, royal shadow and star-enhanced humanity, created something unprecedented. The air shimmered. A figure materialized, translucent at first, then solidifying. A woman with Seraphina's features but timeless eyes, wearing robes woven from night itself. "My daughter," the first Shadow Queen said, "you've done what I once did, united shadow and starlight. Humans forgot I was once like them. The first Shadowborn were not born but made, transformed by choosing to embrace both darkness and light." "Save him," Seraphina whispered. "I cannot save. But I can transform. You'll become eternal guardians of the balance, walking between realms forever. Your daughter will inherit both kingdoms when she comes of age." "Yes," Seraphina said without hesitation. The transformation was gentle this time, a reweaving of existence itself. They dissolved and reformed, essence mixing with the twilight between day and night. They stood whole but fundamentally altered. Seraphina's marks now contained actual stars, points of light within darkness. Calyx's eyes held gold mixed with silver. The first queen turned to Theron. "You'll serve those you tried to destroy." A century of service to the Shadow Court. She touched his forehead, and shadow marks of servitude appeared. His eyes dulled with magical compliance. "Tell the Empire the war ends before it begins." News spread across both realms like wildfire. The lost princess who'd returned as something entirely new, neither fully human nor shadowborn, but perfectly both. The war prince who'd sacrificed everything for love. The child who carried the hope of two bloodlines united. Representatives from the Empire arrived within days, bearing treaties instead of weapons. Theron's magically compelled testimony had revealed the truth about the Shadowborn, dispelling centuries of propaganda and fear. They weren't demons, but an ancient people with their own culture, honor, and capacity for love. The first mixed wedding was celebrated within a month. A human merchant who'd fallen for a Shadowborn weaver. Then another, and another. The threshold was modified, allowing approved passage between realms. Trade routes opened, cultural exchanges began. But not all accepted this new unity. The Northern Shadow Court, ruled by King Malthorn the Cruel, declared Seraphina and Calyx abominations to natural order. He marshaled his considerable forces, preparing to cleanse the tainted bloodline. "Let them come," Nyxara said, now general of their combined forces. "We have something they lack." When Malthorn's armies attacked, they faced not just Shadowborn but humans fighting alongside them, Imperial mages channeling starlight while Shadow warriors wove darkness. Seraphina and Calyx stood at the vanguard, wielding powers that shouldn't exist, shadowlight that could burn and heal simultaneously. The battle raged for 3 days. On the final night, as another blood moon rose, Malthorn himself challenged Seraphina to single combat. "You pollute our pure blood," he snarled, shadows forming massive claws. "I enhance it," she replied calmly. The fight was brief, but decisive. When Malthorn tried to drain her shadows, her starlight burned him. When he tried overwhelming her with pure darkness, she embraced and transformed it into something new. She didn't kill him. Instead, she bound him as the first queen had bound Theron, forcing him to see the beauty in unity, the strength in diversity. You'll serve as ambassador to the human realm. Learn what I learned. We're stronger together. The other shadow courts fell in line after that. Not through force, but through example. They saw prosperity in cooperation, strength in diversity, hope in unity. Before fully abdicating her throne, Queen Morwen pulled Seraphina aside one evening as they watched the first mixed children playing in the palace courtyard. "I was wrong," she admitted, words that had never before passed her lips. "I thought human blood would weaken us. Instead, you've shown it completes us." My sister knew this truth. She fled not from shame, but to plant seeds of change, giving you the star, knowing it would call to Calyx, knowing you would bridge our worlds. She played a game of centuries and won. She never told me. She couldn't. The time wasn't right then, but she loved you enough to trust you with destiny itself. Years flowed like water. The age became known as the eternal twilight, when shadow and light stopped warring and learned to dance together in perfect harmony. On the 5th anniversary of their transformation, Seraphina stood on the palace balcony with Calyx, watching 10-year-old Lyrelei train with both human mages and shadow warriors. Her quarter-blood heritage had strengthened through proximity to her transformed parents, making her nearly as powerful as a half-blood. "Do you regret it?" Calyx asked, arms wrapped around her. "We can never be fully one thing or another. We're fully ourselves, and fully each other's. That's more than enough." Through their eternal bond, love flowed constant as the twilight they embodied. They had paid unexpected prices, gained unimaginable powers, built an impossible world. The Spring Moon Festival had evolved into a celebration of unity, no longer purely shadowborn, but shared between realms. Below them, the great courtyard filled with mixed families, former enemies now friends, children who would never know the hatred that once divided their peoples. Lirali looked up at her parents and waved, her marks glowing with inherited power and pride. Soon she would be ready to rule, not just the Shadow Court, but both realms united. The first truly mixed blood ruler, raised in both worlds, understanding both peoples, bridging what had once seemed an impossible divide. "She'll be magnificent," Calyx said, pride evident in his voice. "She already is," Seraphina replied, watching their daughter laugh with her mixed group of friends. In the great hall, the Star of Shadows hung in its place of honor, catching eternal twilight and casting rainbow patterns across the walls. Shadow and light united in a single stone, just as they were united in two hearts that beat as one, in a child who embodied both worlds, in kingdoms that had learned to see strength in their differences. The seamstress who'd offered her last treasure, the prince who'd searched for 50 years, the bond that bridged two worlds, the eternal twilight that would last forever. As laughter echoed through both realms, as former barriers became bridges, as impossible love became eternal truth, the world itself seemed to whisper the lesson learned through sacrifice and love. Unity isn't the absence of difference, but the celebration of it. Love conquers all, even ancient hatred, especially ancient hatred, when it learns to see the beauty in what once seemed foreign. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, not threats, but promises of rain to nourish both realms equally. Seraphina smiled, feeling through her transformed senses how the very fabric of reality had changed. The divide between human and shadowborn wasn't just healing. It had become a source of strength. Ready for the feast? Calyx asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. Always, she said, taking his offered hand. Together they descended to join their people, all their people, in celebration of what love, compassion, and one small act of kindness had accomplished. A seamstress's necklace had changed the world, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures create the largest ripples, and that love, true love, really can conquer all.